All right. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for your patience in getting started with this round. I'm Judge Mulvihill. Before we get started officially, I need to ask the prosecution team, Rizzo. Mr. Chen, can you verify for me that all three of your attorneys and all three of your witnesses and your timekeeper are in the virtual courtroom?
1 second, Your Honor.
And Ms. Legier, I'm going to ask you the same
Yes,
thing for the defense.
I believe we are all here.
Okay.
Attorneys
And then Ms. Legier, for the defendant, Beaker, can you verify that all three attorneys, all three witnesses, and your timekeeper are in the virtual courtroom?
Yes, everyone is present, Your Honor.
Okay. The Bar Association has asked me to ask the scoring judges to turn off their video cameras, I think, to save on bandwidth. So if you would please do that. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Is the prosecution ready for trial?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is the defendant ready for trial?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, the presiding judge and the scoring panelists have all been provided copies of the trial roster with the team's code. I need to confirm that if anybody's intending to or actually taping this round, you need to have the permission of both teams in order to do so. But I also need to inform you that the Colorado Bar Association may be taking photographs or perhaps screenshots of the competition, and that team participation in the state tournament grants automatic permission in the use of these photos by the Colorado Bar Association. There's no one in the virtual courtroom who is not a participant for this trial. I need to remind the teams that no recesses will be allowed except as those that are necessary for a health emergency. And particularly, folks, I cannot give you a recess between the close of evidence and the beginning of closing arguments. At this time, I'm going to ask all of the trial participants, the attorneys and the witnesses, as well as the timekeepers, to turn on their cameras, because I'm going to ask the scoring panelists if they have any reason to be biased in judging either team. All right, Caden Brooks, can you turn on your camera? There you go. All right, let me ask you, Judge Hughes, any reason to be biased in judging either of these teams?
No, Your Honor.
Judge Mallard, any reason to be biased in judging these two teams?
No, Your Honor.
And Judge Landis, any reason to be biased in judging these two teams?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, if the scoring judges would make sure that their cameras are off. And I'm going to ask the trial participants, unless you're actively participating in that phase of the trial, if you would please keep your camera off and your microphone muted. I need to remind the teams that any disputes that arise out of this competition have to be reported in accordance with the competition rules. I need to remind you that compliance with the time requirements will be considered in scoring individual performances. At this time, I'm going to ask each side to introduce the participating team members, the attorneys and the witnesses. So for the prosecution, would the attorneys please introduce themselves?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and members of the opposing counsel. My name is Emily McDonald, and I will be performing the direct of Markowitz and the cross of Taylor Perkins.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Kendrick Chan. I'll be delivering the opening statement, the direct examination of Kyle Kuzak, and the cross-examination of Blake Van Owen.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and members of the opposing counsel. My name is Quinn Burns, and I'll be presenting the direct examination of Alex Cifuentes, the cross-examination of Avery Becker, and the closing statement.
Thank you. Would the witnesses for the prosecution please introduce themselves?
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Haley Weintraub, and I am Kyle Kuzak.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Ashlyn Corain.
Oh, you're muted, Ms. Corain. Ms. Corain, you want to do that again? You got muted right in the middle of your introduction.
Good afternoon. My name is Ashlyn Corain. Good afternoon, members of the jury, opposing counter, and Your Honor. My name is Ashlyn Corain, and I'm Jordan Markowitz.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Kayla Corain, and I'm Alex Cifuentes.
All right, thank you. And the timekeeper for Rizzo this round is Sina Kavi. Good afternoon, Ms. Kavi. And for the defense, would the attorneys for the defense please introduce themselves?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Leah Laguerre. I will be giving the opening statement, the direct of Avery Beckard, and the cross of Detective Jordan Markowitz. Thank you.
My name is Shreya Senthil Kumar. I am directing Kyle Kuzak, and I will be crossing Kyle Kuzak, and I will be directing Taylor Perkins.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. I will be directing Blake Van Owens, crossing Alex Cifuentes, as well as performing the closing statement.
All right, can I give us your name? Mr. Brooks, want to give us your name?
Sorry, Your Honor, you were muted.
What, you want to give us your name?
Oh, I am Caden Brooks.
All right, thank you. Would the witnesses for the defense please introduce themselves?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Faith Petticourt, and I am Avery Becker.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the opposing counsel and of the jury. My name is Claire McLaughlin, and I am Taylor Perkins.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Steph as Blake Van Owen.
All right. Ms. Kyle, I was having trouble with your audio. It was really low. You want to try that again?
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Stephanie Kyle and Blake Van Owen.
Still really low. I don't know if you can turn up the volume on your microphone or maybe get closer to the microphone. Let's try it one more time.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Stephanie Kyle.
Okay, that might be as good as we're going to get for volume. All right, good afternoon, witnesses. And then the timer for Team Beaker is Leah Cook. Afternoon. All right. At this time, I need to swear in the team members, the gallery, the scoring panelists, and the witnesses. At this time, team members, please raise your right hands. You can respond with an affirmative nod to each of the oaths. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition? Witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, and that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? Gallery members, including teacher and attorney coaches, family members and friends, please raise your right hands. Do you promise to represent yourselves as positive role models and to behave in a manner that exemplifies ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after this mock trial round? Finally, would the three scoring panelists please raise your right hands? Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition? All right. Are there any preliminary matters on behalf of the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution requests that all stipulated facts are admitted into evidence.
Any objection by the defense?
No, Your Honor.
Stipulated facts are admitted into evidence and have been constructively read to the jury.
We also ask that any entering exhibits are also published to the jury.
Any objection by the defense?
No, Your Honor.
So then once an exhibit is admitted, you can assume that it is simultaneously being constructively published to the jury. You don't need to ask for permission to have the exhibit published to the jury. Anything further?
We also ask that any time remaining is used for rebuttal on close.
That request is granted.
No other preliminary matters, Your Honor.
All right, preliminary matters on behalf of the defense.
Yes, just one, Your Honor. We ask that time be stopped for any technical difficulties.
Yeah, and so I've got the discretion to actually stop time within certain limits if there are technical difficulties. I will try to keep an eye on things and let you know if I'm noticing technical difficulties. If you're having technical difficulties on your end, either team that I'm not aware of, make me aware of them. I'll deal with them in a fair manner. I can stop time if necessary, up to a certain amount. So that request will be granted with that clarification. Anything else on behalf of the defense?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Then we will hear opening statements for the prosecution.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Chen.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, on March 6, 2020, Mackenzie Brackman, an attorney and mock trial coach, was found dead in his home. Mr. Brackman was stabbed and bled to death. Who stabbed him? Someone who had the motive to force themselves into his home. Perhaps a student was forced off the team. Avery Becker. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence will show that Avery Becker had an ongoing grudge against the late Mr. Brackman, to the point of planning a burglary. And before the murder, she texted Alex Cifuentes, another student at the school, messages surrounding a break-in. And all the evidence will point to Avery's anger from being forced off the team went into forcing themselves into Mr. Brackman's home, making them guilty of second-degree burglary. When Becker then found out that Brackman was in the home, a struggle began between the two of them. As a result, Mr. Brackman was stabbed and killed. Today, ladies and gentlemen, you'll hear the evidence. First, you'll hear from Detective Jordan Markowitz, the detective assigned for Mr. Brackman's death, who will testify to her investigation as well as cell phone data, placing Becker near the Brackman's house at the time of the crime. Then you'll hear from Kyle Kuzak, who reconstructed the crime scene and will testify to exactly how this crime occurred, a burglary gone wrong, and the means by which Becker committed burglary and murder. Finally, you'll hear from Alex Cifuentes, who will testify to Avery Becker's motive for breaking into the Brackman residence. The evidence will show, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Avery Becker was the one who broke into Mr. Brackman's home, committing second-degree burglary, and a struggle began with the late Mr. Brackman. In the process, Avery Becker stabbed the victim, leading to his unfortunate death. Under the law, this is felony murder. Avery Becker was the one who forced herself into Mr. Brackman's door after being forced off of his mock trial team. And the evidence will show that the only reasonable conclusion based on the evidence, the only way to get justice for Mr. Brackman is to find Avery Becker guilty on both counts, burglary and felony murder. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Penn. Opening statement on behalf of the defendant. Ms. Laguerre.
Yes, Your Honor. Not a suspect, but a scapegoat. As a senior last year in Colorado High School's A-team for mock trial, Avery Becker was favored to win Best Attorney Award at state. But all of that changed when she was accused of murdering her very own mock trial coach, Mr. Brackman. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, although Avery Becker had their disputes with the late Mr. Brackman, she never wished or wanted any harm on him. This is a stark contrast to Blair Boland, whose own father is sitting in jail today because the late Mr. Brackman failed to win his case. You may ask yourself why Blair Boland isn't here today. That's because right after the time of the late Mr. Brackman's murder, Blair Boland disappeared. Today, you will first hear from Avery Becker, who will tell you about how truly sorry she was for vandalizing her coach, the late Mr. Brackman's car. She will also tell you how she has the same exact build and body shape as Blair Boland's, so it could have been either of them on the captured ring video. Then you will hear from Avery's very best friend, Taylor Perkins, who was gracious enough to quit the mock trial team for her best friend, Avery. Taylor will also tell you that on the day of the late Mr. Brackman's murder, her and Avery were together the whole day looking for Avery's phone. Finally, you will hear from Detective Blake Van Owen, who will tell you of the many areas in this investigation Detective Markowitz and Detective Kyle Kuzak overlooked. In addition, Blake Van Owens will tell you how Blair Boland had greater motive since Blair Boland's very own father had been sent to jail due to the late Mr. Brackman's faults in court. Today, the prosecution will try to show you a set of text messages that Alex Cifuentes supposedly received from Avery Becker and claim that Avery Becker had intentions to wreck Mr. Brackman, her mock trial coach's house. But these text messages are just screenshots and have no way of being authenticated. The prosecution will also try to say that these text messages that Alex Cifuentes received from Avery Becker and the cell tower data alone are enough to prove Avery Becker's guilt. But one crucial factor that they're forgetting is that Avery Becker never had her phone on the day of the late Mr. Brackman's murder. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today the prosecution has the burden of proof. The prosecution has been tasked with proving without a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker, a senior in high school, broke into her mock trial coach's house on March 6th with the intent of committing a crime and left having committed first-degree murder. If throughout today's case you find yourself with any doubt that Avery Becker committed such a crime, we ask that you find Avery Becker innocent. And remember that Avery Becker isn't a suspect, but a scapegoat for Blair Boland. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Laguerre. Would the prosecution please call their first witness?
Yes, the prosecution would like to call Detective Markowitz to the stand.
All right. The detective has already been sworn. Go ahead, Ms. McDonald.
State your name and spell your last for the court.
Detective Markowitz, are you with us? Ashlyn Corain.
State your name and spell your last for the court.
Jordan Markowitz, Markowitz.
What is your profession?
I have been a detective for 13 years and I've worked for the Denver Police Department for 7 years.
Have you had any extra job training?
I've had specialized training in cell phone technology and forensic data recovery.
Can you describe what that is?
Yeah, I learned how to interpret cell tower data and obtain phone records.
How many cell phone records have you downloaded in total?
I've downloaded literally hundreds of cell phone records.
Your Honor, at this time, I tender Jordan Markowitz as an expert in the field of cell phone technology, forensic data recovery, and homicide investigation.
Cell phone technology, data recovery, and
Homicide investigation.
any objection or voir dire?
Yes, Your Honor, brief voir dire.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Detective Markowitz.
Afternoon.
Do you have a cell phone technology and forensic recovery certificate?
Yes, that is correct.
And to receive such certificate, you only completed a 3-day training course?
Yes, and in my training, I've downloaded literally hundreds of phones.
Your Honor, I object to Detective Jordan Markowitz being entered in as an expert in cell phone technology, forensic recovery data, and homicide detective due to the fact that her training on cell phone technology and forensic recovery was only 3 days, and it was not sufficient to grasp the scope of that field.
You want to reply to the objection?
Yes, Your Honor. As Detective Markowitz has downloaded literally hundreds of cell phone records, the experience in her job training, as well as being a police investigator, a detective for 13 years, this would lead her to be an expert in all those fields.
I would agree. She's got sufficient training and experience to be qualified as an expert, should be recognized as such and allowed to apply. You may continue.
What case were you put on in March of 2020?
I was put on the case to investigate the death of Mackenzie Brackman as a criminal defense lawyer.
Please describe the scene.
I saw a victim outside the door with a knife adjacent to the victim, and there was a pool of blood coming from the victim's left shoulder.
Did you find a knife near the victim?
Yes, I did.
How did you know who the victim was?
There was an ID on the body that said Mackenzie Brackman.
Can you please describe the knife that was found at the scene next to the body?
It had a silver handle, and there was blood over the knife.
I'm going to now present what has been previously marked as Exhibit 1. Do you recognize this picture?
Yes, that is the deceased body that we found at the crime scene.
Can you please reference Exhibit 1? Do you notice anything near the door when you investigated it?
Yeah, they had a Ring doorbell, and that doorbell records people when you become near it.
Did Brackman have any other security measures?
He had 2 more cameras pointed at the gate to the backyard, and one was pointed towards the back door.
Was the camera able to retain any of the incident?
Yes.
How did you access the video?
Through Brackman's Ring account, which we found on the internet.
I'm now going to present what has been previously marked as Exhibit 10. Do you recognize this video?
Yes, I do. It's the one that we found in our investigation.
Permission to admit what has been previously marked as Exhibit 10 into evidence?
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. I object to the relevancy of the video. I don't see how a video of an unidentifiable individual can prove anything in this case.
You want to respond, Ms. McDonald?
Yes, as the video was a part of Detective Markowitz's investigation of this crime, and this is the assailant that did murder Brackman, this is important to the case.
Objection will be overruled. 10 will be admitted.
Permission to also admit Exhibit 1 into evidence?
Any objection to Exhibit 1?
Yes, Your Honor. I don't think Exhibit 1 is relevant due to the fact that the nature of how Mr. Brackman was killed does not really come into question. I think it's pretty clear that he was stabbed, and I don't think we need Exhibit 1 to prove that.
You want to respond, Ms. McDonald?
Yes, Your Honor. As again, this was an great piece of information to Detective Markowitz's case. It was used to identify the body. It's used to see how Detective Markowitz was positioned, and it was used in her investigation. It is important to the case.
One will be admitted over objection.
After watching that video, can you please describe what you saw?
Yes, I saw someone with a mask and gloves coming up to the door and then in turn leaving.
To gather more evidence, what else of Brackman's did you look at?
We looked at his cell phone and the rest of his house.
When you looked through his phone, what did you find?
We found that he was the coach of the mock trial team.
What school did he coach for?
Colorado High School.
Did you at first suspect anyone on the mock trial team of committing this murder?
We knew people were angry at him in the mock trial team, so yes.
Objection, speculation.
Response?
As it was a standard part of her investigation to be suspicious of people, and since she has said no one specifically, and again, as it was a part of her investigation, it's not speculation.
Well, testimony has to show how she would know what it is she's talking about. I didn't hear any foundation or explanation of that. So at this point, it appears to be speculation. So I'm going to sustain the objection, but you can certainly ask further questions and then re-ask that specific question.
Yes, Your Honor. Did you interview with anyone on the mock trial team?
Yes, we interviewed with we did interview with people on the mock trial.
And did they say that anybody was mad at Brackman?
They meant
Response to the hearsay objection?
I can rephrase.
Okay, the objection is sustained.
Did they claim that anyone was had feelings towards Brackman?
Objection, that's still hearsay.
Your response?
It does not call directly for hearsay, as she would not be stating or could not state the exact words said.
Permission to respond?
Let me digest this. Go ahead, Ms. Laguerre.
The question is still asking the witness to recall what happened in an out of court statement. Therefore, it's still hearsay.
Right. Unless there's some reason that it's not hearsay or it's an exception to the hearsay rule, I have to sustain the objection.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, I ask that you have the defendant turn on her camera for this line of questioning at this time.
All right. Would Avery Becker please turn on her video camera?
Detective Markowitz, I would now like to have you identify the defendant on the Zoom hearing today. Would you recognize the defendant from when you arrested her?
Yes, they're the one who just turned on the camera.
And who is that person?
That would be Avery Becker.
Your Honor, let the record reflect Detective Markowitz has identified the defendant, Miss Avery Becker. Did you try and obtain any text messages from Becker?
Hold on. The record will reflect identification subject to cross-examination. You may continue.
Did you try and obtain any text messages from Becker?
Yes, but Becker's attorney said that they lost their phone on March 5th, the day before the murder. So they sent screenshots of.
Can you explain how you estimate the location of a phone?
Yes. So According to the cell towers, if the cell phone is in range of the cell towers in their quadrants, then we are able to detect where the cell phone has been on as long as it's turned on and on an airplane mode or turned off.
When did Avery Becker's phone stop sending signals to towers?
At 13:20 hours on March 6, 2020.
Was this a red flag in your investigation?
Yes.
Speculation.
Overruled.
Would you like me to restate the question?
Oh, no. It meant, yes, it meant that Avery Becker's cell phone was continuously contacting cell towers until after the murder, where it was disposed.
I'm now going to screen share what has been previously marked as Exhibit 15. Do you recognize this map?
Yes, it was a map that we, with the cell towers that we used to trace Avery Becker's phone.
Can you describe cell towers?
Yes, so they all have 120 degree angles. So when you move past it, it will send a signal to your phone and back to the tower on either of the 1 to 3 quadrants.
Did you use this map in your investigation?
Yes, I was able to track Becker's phone with this information.
Permission to admit Exhibit 15 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Objection hearsay. This is an out-of-court statement.
Your response to the hearsay objection?
This is not hearsay, as this was something it's a map. It's not something that someone said.
So it's not a statement?
It is a map of where Becker's phone was traced. So it is not a statement from a person out of court. It is just a map.
I agree. Objection is overruled. 15 will be admitted.
Permission to, or I will now screen share what has been previously marked as Exhibit 16. Alrighty. Do you recognize this map?
Yes, it's the same map as previous exhibit, but I drew the line of movement between the phones.
And what was that path?
Well, here, I can annotate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first antenna received a signal from Becker's phone because Becker got a text at Perkins at 12:47, and the antenna covers Becker's house. Another text was received from Perkins at 12:45, but this time it was at this antenna. And the next call was from Perkins at 13:05 in the same range. Then it was followed by another call at 13:06 and the text at 13:17. And these were on this cell phone tower, and the tower is close to Brackman's house.
Awesome. Can you also highlight where the fry shack is?
Yes, I can. The fry shack would be right here.
Thank you. So what could you determine from the path Becker took?
She started at her house, drove down to Rock Creek Parkway across Colton Road, and then led to Brackman's house at Castle Peak Avenue.
Objection, speculation. Although the witness is an expert, they have no way of knowing what exactly Avery Becker did on that day.
Your response to that objection is
As she is an expert in cell phone records, and this is a map of cell phone records, she is able to make a statement on this.
I agree. Objection is overruled.
Where did Avery claim that she was at on the day of the murder?
She claimed that she was at the fry shack in the mall looking for her lost phone.
Is the fry shack in the range of where her phone was?
No.
So you're saying that on March 6th, her phone was pinging to a cell tower near Brackman's house around the time of the murder?
Yes, exactly.
So in your expert opinion, it was Avery Becker who broke into Brackman's house?
In my expert opinion,
Speculation.
Response to the speculation objection?
As this is the conclusion that she came to during her investigation, and she is a expert witness in investigation, she is able to make her opinion on it.
I agree. Overruled.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Cross-examination, Ms. Laguerre?
Yes, Your Honor. First, I ask that the prosecution stop. Oh, they stopped sharing it. Never mind. Good morning, Detective. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?
No, I don't mind at all.
Perfect. Let's start off with when you first arrived at the scene. You first arrived at 14:20 hours or around 2:20 p.m.
Yes, I did.
And you first observed the victim's body face down with a knife in their upper left shoulder.
Yes, that is correct.
And you saw the victim's shirt was blood-soaked.
Yes, it was.
Now moving on to the state of Mr. Brackman's residence. You entered the residence through the back gate, correct?
Yes, we did.
And once there, you found that the gate was unlatched.
Yes, the gate was unlatched.
And since the gate was unlatched, that means there was no sign of forced entry.
No, there were no sign of forced entry.
And once inside the residence, you saw that it was only in slight disarray.
There was disarray, but slightly, yes.
But you agree that this could just be the normal state of the residence?
Objection, relevance.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I couldn't quite hear you. Can you please repeat?
I couldn't tell if Ms. McDonald had objected or not.
I'm
Ms.
sorry,
McDonald?
cut out again.
Ms. McDonald, did you pose an objection?
Yes, I said it's objection speculation.
Your response to that objection, Ms. Laguerre?
This is not speculation. I'm simply asking an expert what they found once they entered the residence.
I agree. The objection is overruled.
Your Honor, permission to change my objection. I originally said objection, relevance.
Ms. Laguerre, the relevance objection, your response?
This is relevant because this is the facts that the expert went over when they were establishing the conclusion they came to.
I agree. The objection is overruled. Again,
I'll restate the question for you, or re-ask, I mean. You agreed that the slight disarray could just be the normal state of the residence.
It may have been.
While once inside the residence, did you perceive anything to be missing?
Yes.
I'll ask the question one more time. While in the residence, did you perceive anything to be missing?
No, there was nothing missing in the residence.
So none of the laptops or computers or flat screen TVs had been stolen, correct?
Objection, asked and answered.
response?
My previous question was anything missing? And my second question was simply elaborating to clarify that none of the expensive items had been missing.
Well, but your first question dealt with anything, so the universe of items. And wouldn't that include flat screen TVs and any valuable property?
I guess it would. Permission to move on, Your Honor.
Yeah, so I'll sustain the objection.
Okay, now let's move on to the conclusion you drew. Based on your many homicides you've investigated, you came to the conclusion that the victim had caught the intruder breaking into the house.
Yes.
And then Mr. Brackman confronted the intruder with a knife.
May have, yes.
But then the intruder got control of the knife.
Yes.
Wouldn't you agree that a confrontation between the victim and the intruder where the handling of the knife was interchanged would at least cause some cuts or some additional blood splatter from the person breaking into the house?
We have no evidence of that.
Based on your evidence at the scene, oh wait, never mind, I'm sorry. As I recall, you said the residence was only in slight disarray.
The residence was in some slight disarray.
Wouldn't a confrontation between an intruder and a victim where a knife was being handled create quite a mess?
I believe that in a with it, if the intruder only had one motive, then maybe there wouldn't be a mess.
Finally, I'd like to ask you about your previous run-ins with the late Mr. Brackman. Being a homicide detective, you've had your fair share of run-ins with Mr. Brackman.
Objection, relevance.
Why is this relevant, Ms. Laguerre?
This is relevant because I'm proving the relationship or any personal bias there might be between Detective Markowitz and the late Mr. Brackman.
I'll allow it to show bias. Overruled.
Okay, I'll re-ask the question for you. Being a homicide detective, you've had your fair share of run-ins with Mr. Brackman,
By sharing the same career, yes.
and you believe that Brackman took cheap shots while performing his cross-examination?
Objection, relevance.
Again, this is going to prove the relationship and the personal bias between Detective Jordan Markowitz and the late Mr. Brackman.
I agree. Overruled.
I'll ask the question again for you. You believe that Brackman took cheap shots while performing his cross-examination?
Any lawyer may do that.
And the fact that Brackman did criminal defense work raised the specter that this could be a work of an ex-client of his?
May you repeat that question?
Of course. You believe that the fact that Brackman did criminal defense work raised the specter that this could be the work of an ex-client of his?
Yeah, maybe. If anyone had any personal motive against him, it could be.
Moving on to Brackman's phone records, or as you call them, CDRs. You found a number of texts pertaining to mock trial?
Yes, we did. We found out that he was the coach through that.
And you thought it seemed highly unlikely that Brackman's mock trial activity had anything to do with his death?
Not due to the nature of the club.
According to your analysis, Avery Becker's phone could be traced to cell tower 1197-1 or the cell tower near Brackman's house at the time of his murder.
Yes.
But were you aware that Avery had lost your phone the previous day?
Yes, we were.
And were you also aware that Avery was not able to find it on March 6th?
We are aware.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect examination.
Can you repeat that again?
Redirect examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Was it Avery Becker's claim that she had lost her phone at, let me rephrase it. Was it possible that Avery Becker lied about losing her phone on the previous day of the murder?
Yes, that would.
Speculation.
Response.
As she is a police investigator and a detective, and that is what she is an expert in, I am just asking her about her opinions on that information.
Permission to respond?
No, no need. You're asking her about something that's a possibility and not based on anything that she actually inspected or reviewed or observed or concluded. So I'm going to sustain the objection.
And no further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross, Ms. Laguerre?
No, Your Honor.
All right, witness can step down. Would the prosecution please call their next witness?
Yes, the prosecution calls Kyle Kuzak to the stand.
Witness Cusack has already been sworn. Go ahead, Mr. Chen.
Good afternoon, Ms. Kuzak. Please state your full name and spell your last for the court.
My name is Kyle Kuzak, Kuzak.
And what is your occupation?
I'm a crime scene reconstruction investigator.
How long have you had this occupation?
I've had this occupation for about 19 years.
And where do you work?
I've spent the last 3 years of my work with the city of Denver.
And are you certified in your field?
Yes, I am certified.
By who?
The Colorado Bureau of Investigation certified me.
And what type of crime scenes have you investigated?
I've really investigated all types of crime scenes. This includes home invasions, homicides, domestic violence, etc.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, in light of Kyle Kuzak's experience, I would like to offer Kyle Kuzak as an expert in crime scene reconstruction.
Any objection or voir dire?
A brief audio, Your Honor.
Go ahead, Ms. Santopamor.
Good morning, Good morning, Ms. Cusack. You have testified your opinions in front of the jury as a crime scene reconstruction investigator.
Yes, I have. That is my occupation.
You based your opinions on your investigation of the physical evidence, including the photographs and blood droplets.
Yes,
But you're not licensed in forensic science or examining blood splatter.
I am not, but I am licensed to be a CSR, which includes that sort of work.
But you are not a police officer, just a civilian employee of the Denver Police Department.
Yes, I am a civilian.
And you've only been working as a civilian employee of the DPD for 3 years.
3 years is a long enough time to be in a department.
Your Honor, I object to Cusack being an expert witness due to a lack of experience and certification of the nature of this crime.
Overruled. The witness has sufficient experience to testify as an expert in the area of crime scene reconstruction. Should be allowed to do so. Please continue, Mr. Chen.
Ms. Cusack, how do you approach reconstructing a crime scene?
Approaching a crime scene comes in 5 steps: recognition and documentation, collection of evidence, evaluation of evidence, hypothesis and testing, and finally the reconstruction itself.
And is this the process you used to complete this case?
As with all of my CSR work, yes, this was the process I used.
And what materials did you use to complete this process?
I used all of the materials that were available to me, which included the police reports, photographs from the scene, and the 4 Ring doorbell videos.
And after completing this crime scene reconstruction process, what did you conclude?
I concluded that on the day of March 6th, the perpetrator approached the front door before realizing it was locked. The perpetrator approached the front door before realizing it was locked, and then they proceeded to the back gate.
As far as you know, were there any fingerprints or DNA recovered at the scene?
There was no DNA or fingerprints recovered, but that is completely expected in a crime like this.
And why is that expected?
In all of the Ring doorbell videos, the perpetrator is shown wearing a mask and gloves.
So after the perpetrator proceeded to the backyard, what do you believe happened next?
After proceeding to the backyard, they walked through the back gate and then approached the back sliding glass door.
Was there a camera at that side of the residence?
Yes, a camera does show that event occurring.
And was there any evidence gathered right inside the residence?
Directly inside the residence, there were scuff marks found on the floor of the kitchen.
Would you recognize a photo of these scuff marks if they were shown to you?
I would, yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I am screen sharing what have been previously marked as Exhibit 18. Ms. Cusack, what is this?
Those are the scuff marks found on the floor of Mr. Brackman's residence.
And, oh, Your Honor, at this time, I move for Exhibit 18 to be admitted into evidence.
No, Your Honor.
18 is admitted.
Ms. Cusack, what do these scuff marks tell you?
Scuff marks like these indicate a struggle in the kitchen immediately when the perpetrator entered the residence.
Was there any other evidence that supported a struggle in the kitchen?
Upon entering the kitchen, we found an open knife drawer and a knife block on the counter.
Would you recognize a photo of the drawer if you saw it?
I would, yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I am showing what has been previously marked as Exhibit 7. Ms. Cusack, what is this?
That is the knife drawer found open inside of Mr. Brackman's kitchen.
Your Honor, at this time, I move for Exhibit 7 to be admitted into evidence.
Any objection?
Objection relevance.
Response to the relevance objection?
Your Honor, this exhibit is relevant because Ms. Cusack used it to come to her conclusions about how the crime occurred and is essential foundation for those conclusions.
I'll allow it. Objection is overruled. 7 is admitted.
What did this open knife drawer tell you, Ms. Cusack?
This open knife drawer told me that the victim was clearly alerted to the perpetrator's presence and went to look for a knife in self-defense, opening the drawer.
Was there anything you used to determine how the victim, Mr. Brackman, died?
An autopsy report was made on the victim.
Did you review this autopsy report?
I did review it, yes.
And what does this report establish?
The report establishes that the victim had no other defensive wounds except for the stab wound in his back. The knife was stabbed on his back left shoulder and partially lodged there.
So, in your expert opinion, based on all the physical evidence at the scene, what happened on the afternoon of March 6th, 2020?
On the afternoon of March 6, 2020, the perpetrator approached the residence before proceeding to the back gate and the backyard. They entered through this back sliding glass door, and upon entering, Mr. Brackman was waiting for them with a knife. He had been alerted of the perpetrator's presence by the ring doorbell alerts on his phone. They entered a scuffle shown by the scuff marks. This scuffle moved from the back door to the kitchen table, in which the perpetrator gained control of the knife. Mr. Brackman was stabbed near the kitchen table, and then he proceeded to the front door where he was found dead, and the perpetrator left the residence.
So, how would you summarize this crime?
It was a simple home invasion crime gone wrong.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination, Ms. Senthil Kumar.
Yes, Your Honor. To your understanding, the digital files and photographs of the crime scene became partially corrupted.
Only the photographs of the blood were partially corrupted, but yes.
You were able to review the photographs prior to the file corruption.
I had no trouble reviewing them in my analysis.
You believe that the scuff marks indicate that there was a struggle between the victim and perpetrator instead of a surprise attack.
Yes, that is what I concluded.
But you realize that scuff marks cannot be carbon dated or examined to see how old they are.
Yes, I am aware.
There are no before and after images of the scuff marks, correct?
There is not, no.
So what you're implying is that there's no proof that the scuff marks were made during the murder.
In my expert opinion, with all of my foundation, that is my best idea of why the scuff marks were there at that time.
So you have presumed that the scuff marks were made during the murder.
It is my expert opinion that they are from the murder.
From the physical evidence that you had, you came to the conclusion that the victim was alerted by the ring security system as the intruder approached.
Yes, that is the most likely course of action.
The victim then took them from the knife block, and there was a struggle between the victim and perpetrator over the knife.
The knife was either taken from the knife block or the open knife drawer, but yes, that is what happened.
And the knife that was used to stab the victim is not the same brand of knife from the missing slot in the knife block.
That is true, but the knife could have come from either the drawer or the knife in the knife block was replaced by a different brand.
You stated that you would prefer that if you had more physical evidence at the scene.
It is always best to have more physical evidence, but the physical evidence we had was enough.
You stated that this seemed to be like a straightforward home invasion crime.
Yes, it was.
But you were not able to recreate all event segments.
As with most crimes, investigators are not able to recreate all of the segments, but we recreated most.
So you admit that there's a possibility that there might be some missing holes in your investigation.
That is always a possibility, but I am confident in what I concluded.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Right. Redirect examination, Mr. Ken.
No to redirect at this time, Your Honor.
All right, the witness can step down. Would the prosecution please call their next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Alex Cifuentes to the stand.
And
excuse me.
Go ahead.
At this time, I'd like to request a time check.
Yeah, go ahead.
There is 7 minutes and 41 seconds remaining for direct.
Thank you.
All right, and the witness has already been sworn. Go ahead, Ms. Burns.
All right. Good afternoon, Alex. Can you state your full name and spell your last for the jury?
Alex Cifuentes, Sifuentes.
And what school did you go to?
I go to Colorado High School. The students call it CHS.
What grade are you in?
I'm a senior.
And what grade were you in at the time of Mr. Brackman's death?
I was in 11th grade, so I was a junior.
And who was Mr. Brackman?
Mr. Brackman was the mock trial coach at CHS.
And what was your relationship to Mr. Brackman?
Well, I was on the team, so he was my coach.
And why did you decide to join the mock trial team?
Avery Becker, another student at CHS, convinced me to join when we were freshmen, and I've been doing it ever since.
And who's Avery Becker?
Avery Becker is a student in my grade.
How would you describe your and Avery's relationship before Mr. Brackman's murder?
Avery and I were practically best friends.
And you mentioned Avery convinced you to join the mock trial team, correct?
Yes.
And was Avery on the team with you?
Yes.
And how was Avery's participation on the team?
Prepared and show up to practice late most of the time.
And did Mr. Brackman respond to Avery's participation on the team?
Mr. Brackman tried to be patient with Avery, but eventually he just got fed up and he demoted Avery from the A team to the B team.
And did Avery stay on the B team for long?
No, Avery somehow convinced their second best friend, Taylor Perkins, to quit the team, which eventually forced Mr. Brackman to bring both of them back to the A team.
Did the team have a response to this?
The whole team was really upset about Avery being let back onto the A team. People were even more upset after Avery won Best Attorney Award and Best Closing Argument Award at the regional tournament.
And did Mr. Brackman have a response to Avery's awards?
During practice, Mr. Brackman tried to explain to Avery that there was a difference between good lawyering and there's a difference between good sportsmanship and good lawyering, and what Avery had done would be considered malpractice in the real world.
And did Avery react to anything Mr. Brackman said?
Avery was so upset and he left practice early.
Did Avery do anything after leaving practice?
Avery vandalized Mr. Brackman's car by writing Worst Attorney Award across the hood in permanent marker.
Did Mr. Brackman have any reaction when he saw his car was vandalized?
He honestly could have pressed criminal charges, but he wouldn't have done that. He was a really caring coach that just wanted the best for his students.
After that, how was Avery's participation on the team?
Well, he was kicked off the team.
And did Avery's absence have any effect on the team?
Yes, under the mock trial state rules, you can't just switch out people so close to the state tournament. And so Avery being kicked off the team meant that we were going to have to forfeit.
And did you hear from Avery after that?
Yes, Avery texted me shortly after the vandalism incident and asked that I ask Mr. Brackman to let them back on the team on their behalf.
And did you respond to Avery's text?
I told Avery that I would talk to Mr. Brackman for them.
Objection, hearsay.
Response to the hearsay objection?
Your Honor, this is not hearsay because the statements are of the opposing party, and the other statements are used as context to back up the opposing party statements.
Did you want to reply, Mr. Brooks?
No, Your Honor.
All right. I agree with Attorney Burns. The objection's overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, I am screen sharing what has been marked for identification as exhibit number 14. Alex, could you please identify this?
They're screenshots of a text message conversation I had with Avery Becker.
And these are the exact texts on your phone?
Yes.
Thank you. And did Mr. Brackman allow Avery back on the team?
No, he doesn't have Avery back on.
And did you relay this information to Avery?
Yes, I texted Avery letting them know.
And did Avery Becker react to this?
Avery was so mad.
What was your and Avery's relationship like after she was kicked off the team?
Well, before they were kicked off the team, we were best friends and we were still teammates and we pushed each other to be even better.
And did you see her after being kicked off the team?
Yes, I saw her after at the Fry Shack, which is a restaurant the mockers like to go to study. Avery thanked me for talking to Mr. Brackman, and they even said that they believed I should have won the Best Attorney Award. And they also let me play a new game on their phone.
Moving on, was there any police involvement regarding the murder and burglary of Mr. Brackman?
Yes, I was called the police detective.
And were you interviewed by this detective?
I was.
And what did you tell the detective?
Well, Avery and I were best friends. I didn't want to rat them out, but I also didn't want to lie to anyone. So I told the detective about the text messages I received from Avery.
All right, moving on. Did anything happen after you spoke with the detective?
Yes, a defense private investigator asked to interview with me, but I declined.
And why did you decline?
I declined the interview because they accused me of faking the text messages I received from Avery, and they also accused me of stealing Avery's phone and giving it to a student named Blair Rollins, which was not true at all.
And do you know Blair Rollins?
Barely. We might have said hi to each other in the hallway, but we were not friends at all.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination, Mr. Brooks?
Yes. So at the time of the murder, you were a junior at Colorado High School.
Yes,
And you were friends with Avery Becker.
I was. We were basically best friends.
And she was the one who introduced you to mock trial.
Yes, when we were freshmen.
But at the time of the murder, you were quite annoyed with her.
I was frustrated with Avery.
And for as hardworking as you were, you believe that you should have played a bigger role on the team.
Well, I believed I was much more prepared than Avery, and Avery's antics left this team in a constant state of anxiety.
And after Avery was moved from the team, you made an effort to try to get her back on the team.
I did. We were friends, and I would do anything for them.
And after the murder of Mr. Brackman, you were required to do an interview with the police.
I was.
And when you went down to the police station, you forgot your phone with the texts.
My phone had a faulty battery, and so I plugged it in before I had the interview, and I forgot it at home.
And you do not have this phone anymore?
I got it 3 months ago. I got a new one 3 months ago.
So there's no way to prove the validity of these text messages?
Well, when I told the police officers I had forgotten my phone, I offered to bring it back, but they said text messages would suffice, so they didn't have an issue with it.
And when you were at the fry shack with Avery, she let you use the phone?
Yes.
And you were playing games on the phone before she left?
Yes, she let me play games on her phone.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Redirect examination, Ms. Burns?
No redirect necessary, Your Honor.
All right, the witness can step down. Any further evidence on behalf of the prosecution?
No, Your Honor, the prosecution rests.
All right. Evidence on behalf of the defendant. Would you call your first witness, please?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense would like to call Avery Becker to the stand.
All right, Avery Becker's already been sworn. Go ahead, Ms. Laguerre.
Good morning, Ms. Becker, and thank you for being here.
Morning.
Can you please state your full name and spell the last for the jury?
Avery Becker, Becker.
Hold on, we're not getting video of the witness, Ms. Becker. Ms. Petticord, did you turn on your camera?
Yes, let me retry turning it on.
Oh, there we go. Hold on. Why don't you try speaking again?
Are you seeing my video?
There we go. Now it works. Okay. Sorry to interrupt, Ms. Laguerre. If you want to start again, that's fine.
Okay. Can you please state your full name and spell the last for the jury?
Avery Becker, Becker.
You know why you were being called here today?
I am being called here today for the murder of Mackenzie Brackman.
Where did you go to high school last year?
I went to Colorado High School, also known as CHS.
What activities did you participate in at CHS?
I participated in the mock trial and was looking forward to winning Best Attorney Award.
How did you know the late Mr. Brackman?
I knew Mr. Brackman because he was my mock trial coach.
What was your relationship like with Mr. Brackman?
Mr. Brackman's and my relationship was not well. We often fought at practice because he was always getting on my case for being lazy.
Now moving on to a month before the regional tournament. What happened a month before the regional tournament?
A month before regionals, Mr. Brackman got annoyed with me again and demoted me to the B team.
What happened after you were unfortunately demoted?
Taylor Perkins, my best friend, was nice enough to drop the team for me.
That was such a nice thing for your best friend Taylor to do for you.
Yes, it was.
How did the regional tournament go?
The regional tournament went well. I actually did win Best Attorney Award there.
Moving on to after regionals, what happened the Tuesday night after the regional tournament?
Brackman was getting on my case how I should have followed the directing cross that he had helped prepare for me, and so I walked out of practice, and I thought I had a...
What did you do after this?
I went home and cried to my mom that I had been kicked off the team.
Did you ever try to apologize to Mr. Brackman for unfortunately vandalizing his car?
Yes, the very next day I went to his office, and his secretary, though, told me that he did not want to see me.
Was it important that you ended up apologizing to Mr. Brackman?
It was important. I really did want to apologize to him in person.
So it sounds like it was very important that you wanted to apologize to him. So how did you end up apologizing to Mr. Brackman?
I had to apologize to him via text, although I really did just want to do it in person.
Now moving on to the day and the night before the murder, or March 5th. Who were you with the day of the murder? The day before.
The day before the murder, I was with Taylor Perkins at the Fry Shack.
What did you and Taylor do?
We played games on my phone.
Do you remember seeing anyone from CHS there?
Yes, I remember seeing a bunch of members from the mock trial team.
Do you remember any specific students who were there?
I remember seeing Alex Fuentes and Blair Rollins.
Are you good friends with Alex Fuentes?
Not really. I consider us enemies.
After hanging out the Fry Shack with your good friend Taylor, what did you two do?
After being at the Fry Shack, we went to the mall.
Now moving on to the day of the murder, or March 6th. When did you last see your phone? On that day?
The last time I saw my phone was at the Fry Shack.
Did you go looking for your phone?
I did go looking for
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
I'll re-ask the question for you. Did you go looking for your phone?
I went looking for my phone with Taylor Perkins, and we decided to skip school that day.
Where did you and Taylor go looking for your phone?
First, we went to the mall and then to the Fry Shack, and we decided to wait there for the second shift because that was when I lost it.
Do you have any idea what could have happened to your phone?
No, other than someone could have stolen it or it died because we kept calling it and no one answered.
You mentioned that you think someone might have stolen it. Do you have any idea who that could have been?
I have a feeling it was Alex Fuentes and Blair Rollins.
Why do you think Alex Fuentes took your phone?
Alex Fuentes would want to set me up, and she was the last one I saw near my phone that would be that mean enough to steal it.
I'm now going to show you what has previously been marked as Exhibit 14. One second. I've placed an arrow near the last text. Can you please read that text for me?
I'm going to wait until he's at work, then break in and trash it.
Do you ever remember sending such text?
No, I don't even know when these were sent.
Did you ever have any intentions of hurting Brackman or breaking into his residency?
No, I would never want to do anything to hurt him.
Do you have any idea how these texts could have been sent if you didn't send them and you didn't have such intentions?
Objection, speculation.
Response to the speculation objection?
I have made it clear that Avery Becker did not send these texts, so I was simply asking her how such texts might have been sent on her phone.
Right, but she'd just be guessing, correct?
That is correct. She would have no concrete way of knowing, but it was her phone, so I believe she might have some idea of what could have happened.
Well, if she's just guessing, that's what speculation is. I'm going to sustain the objection.
I'll move on then. Earlier you said you saw Alex Fuentes and Blair Bolins at the Fly Shack. What was the relationship like between Alex and Blair Bolins?
Alex and Blair Rollins seemed like they were best friends.
What does Blair Bolins look like?
Blair Rollins has the same body build as I do.
Why do you know, sorry, why does Blair Rollins hate Mr. Brackman?
Blair Rollins hates
Objection, leading.
That leading objection is going to be sustained.
Okay. The objection was leading, Your Honor, correct?
Yes.
Permission to rephrase then?
Sure.
Do you know what the relationship was? Do you know what the relationship between Blair Rollins and Mr. Brackman was?
Yes, Mr. Brackman and Blair Rollins did not get along well.
Okay, no further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Cross-examination, Ms. Burns.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, AP Becker. You went to Colorado High School, correct?
Yes.
And you were on their mock trial team?
Yes, I loved mock trial above all things.
You and their coach, Mr. Brackman, had a very rocky relationship, correct?
Yeah, I'd say that. We didn't get along all the time.
And this was initially because he believed you should work harder, right?
Yes, he was always accusing me of being lazy.
And this news made it very mad, did it not?
It did make me mad.
And a month before the regional tournament, Mr. Brackman demoted you to the B team, right?
Yes, he did demote me to the B team.
And this also angered you, correct?
It really did.
But Taylor Perkins left the team and you were brought back onto the 8 team.
Yes, Taylor Perkins was really nice.
And after the regional tournament, Mr. Brackman confronted you about how you should have followed the script that you two spent hours making together, correct?
Objection, hearsay.
Response.
I will rephrase the question.
Okay.
After the regional tournament, Mr. Brackman confronted you once again, did he not?
He did confront me.
And this made you incredibly angry and you stormed out of practice, correct?
This did make me angry because he was just getting on my case again.
And in response to this, you wrote worst attorney award on his car in permanent marker?
I did do that, but I didn't ever mean for it to go this far.
And Mr. Brackman cut you from the mock trial team completely after that?
Unfortunately, yes, and I would say that that was devastating news.
Once again, you became enraged with Mr. Brackman.
Objection, asked and answered.
Overruled.
I'll re-ask the question. Once again, you became enraged with Mr. Brackman.
I did become enraged.
And in total, Mr. Brackman infuriated you quite frequently, did he not?
He did infuriate me, but he was at sometimes a good coach.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Redirect examination, Ms. Laguerre.
Yes, a brief one. After you unfortunately accidentally vandalized the late Mr. Brackman's car, how did that make you, how did you feel?
I can't really put words to it. I just couldn't believe what I had done.
And as you previously stated, apologizing was very important. How did it make you feel that you couldn't apologize to Blackman in person?
I was really devastated because that is the one thing I wanted to do before he unfortunately died.
And again, did you ever, throughout the course of the last year around March, have any intentions of hurting Mr. Blackman or breaking into his house?
No, that would be the last thing I'd ever do.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross examination? I'm sorry, yeah, recross examination, Ms. Burns?
No, Your Honor.
All right, the witness can step down. Would the defense please call their next witness?
The defense would like to call Taylor Perkins to the stand.
All right, the witness Perkins has already been sworn. Go ahead, Ms. Senthil Kumar.
Good evening, good afternoon, Ms. Perkins. Can you please state your full name and spell out your last for the jury? It appears that the witness is frozen.
Ms. McLaughlin, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I apologize.
Okay, you want to ask her the question again, Ms.
Please
Senthil
state-
Kumar?
Can you please state your full name and spell out your last for the jury?
Taylor Perkins, Perkins.
What high school did you attend?
Colorado High School.
Did you participate in any clubs?
Yeah, I was in mock trial.
How did you feel about being in mock trial?
I was only in it for my best friend Avery. It wasn't one of my big interests.
How was Avery's preparation for mock trial meetings?
She was always pretty poorly prepared, but she still excelled.
Did this affect her performance?
No, she still did amazingly.
I would now like you to recall back to before the regional tournament last year. How was Avery's preparation during the practice a month before the regional tournament?
It was pretty bad.
Was there any reaction from Mr. Brackman to Avery's insufficient preparation?
Yeah, he demoted her from the A team to the B team.
What did you do about this?
I decided to quit the team so that Avery could get back on the A team.
Did Avery continue to do mock trial after you left?
Yeah, she did.
On Thursday after school, after Avery got kicked off the team, what did you and Avery do?
We played games on our phone and then went to eat at the Fry Shack.
Did you see anyone from your school at the Fry Shack?
Yeah, a few members of the team were there.
What happened there?
Avery got upset and she went to the bathroom and left her phone on the table.
What happened next?
We left and we went home.
The next morning, what did you do?
I texted Avery and asked her if we were going to carpool together because we usually do to get to school, and she never responded to my texts.
Did you go look for her phone after you realized it was missing?
Yeah, we did. We decided to ditch school and go look for it.
Where did you go?
We retraced our steps at the mall, and when we didn't find it there, we went to the Fry Shack to look there.
While you were at the Fry Shack, did you see anyone that you know?
Yeah, the team members were there again.
Do you know why they were there?
Apparently Brackman didn't show up to practice.
Did you find
Objection,
the phone?
speculation.
Response?
I'm just asking the witness if they knew why the team members were there, and it's not speculation because I'm not inferring, or the witness isn't guessing why they were there. She knows.
Well, but the witness would have to testify as to how she would know, so that we could understand that she's not speculating or guessing. I'm going to sustain the objection.
Was it unusual that you saw the team?
A little, yeah, because they were supposed to be in practice.
Did you find the phone?
No, we never found it.
Let's now talk about the relationship between you and Blair Rollins. Do you know Blair Rollins?
Not super well.
What are your thoughts on them?
I always thought they were kind of weird.
To your knowledge, was Blair Rollins at school the Friday that Coach Brackman was murdered?
No, they weren't there.
Were you anywhere near
Objection,
Brackman's house?
Speculation.
Response?
I asked to the witnesses' knowledge if they knew if Blair Rollins was at school that day. So that's the witness's opinion.
Right, but the witness has to be able to explain how she has that knowledge. Because unless she does that, we can't tell if she saw or heard something or if she's just guessing. So I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay, permission to move on.
Sure. Go ahead.
Were you anywhere near Brackman's house that day?
Could you repeat that, please?
Sure. Were you anywhere near Brackman's house that day?
No, I was with Avery the whole day looking for her phone.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination, Ms. McDonald.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Perkins. You were friends with Avery?
Best friends.
You did mock trial with her?
Yeah, I only did it for her.
Brackman, the coach, was not fond of Avery because she was always late to practice and unprepared.
Yes, that's true.
As Brackman was the coach who was extremely passionate about high school mock trial, it made sense that he was mad.
It did, but he could also be a little unreasonable at times.
After multiple repeats of not coming prepared, he got so mad as to demote Avery.
That's correct.
Since you only did mock trial because of Avery, you quit the team when she was demoted.
That's correct.
This led to Avery being put back on the 18 because there was an open spot.
Correct.
Brackman continued to get mad at her wrongdoings, right?
Yes, he did.
And after one particularly harsh day of getting mad, Avery needed to go outside and blow off some steam, right?
I believe so, yes.
So she went out and vandalized Brackman's car with a Sharpie.
She did it as a small prank that wasn't meant to be permanent.
But no matter what kind of marker it was still defacement of someone else's property.
She did write on his car, yes.
Avery showed up to your house after another failed attempt to get back on the team.
Yes, we were together.
You both went to the Fry Shack?
Yes.
And then to the mall.
That's correct.
And as her phone was like her third kidney, it was very unlikely that she ever would have lost it.
Unlikely, but not impossible.
But still very unlikely.
Unlikely, but not impossible.
And as you guys were out for a while, she didn't notice that it was missing until March 6th, the next day.
That's correct.
You noticed it when you weren't with her?
Ms. Perkins, are you still there? That witness appears to have frozen. Stop time for a second.
Could you repeat the question?
Okay, you're back. Start time again.
You noticed that the phone was missing while you weren't with Avery?
Yes.
Even though you were not the owner of her phone?
No, I'm not the owner.
And it was not your responsibility to keep track of it?
It wasn't, but I happened to notice that she left it on the table.
But you still went out with her to go find it the next day?
Yeah, I knew she wanted it back.
So your whereabouts for an entire day while you were supposed to be at school were unaccounted for?
I was with Avery the whole day.
The day of the murder?
I was with Avery, yes.
and Avery frequently had arguments with the man found dead?
They had their small disagreements.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Redirect examination, Ms. Senthil Kumar.
No, Your Honor.
All right, no further questions, so the witness is excused. Would the defense please call their next witness?
Yes, the defense would like to call Blake Van Owen to the stand.
All right, and the witness Van Owen has already been sworn. Go ahead, Mr. Brooks.
Good afternoon, Blake Van Owens. Please state your full name and spell the last for the jury. Please state your full name and spell the last for the jury.
Blake Van Owens, Owens.
And what is your occupation?
A private investigator, a professor, and an expert witness in police practices.
And do you have any past occupations?
Yes, the Aurora Police Department.
And after you left the Aurora Police Department, were there any other jobs?
Yes, I worked private security guard and then went into private investigation.
How did you become a private investigator?
I was a professor and that opened many opportunities.
What states have you been accepted in as a defense expert?
Colorado, Kansas, and Arizona, and then state courts in Colorado, Wyoming, Nebraska, and New Mexico.
And what court cases have you partaken in?
Crime scene reconstruction 8 times, in cell tower analysis 12 times.
Your Honor, based on Rule 702, I would like to offer Professor Blake Van Owens as an expert in crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, general police investigation, and forensic evidence techniques.
Any objections, voir dire?
Your Honor, brief voir dire.
Go ahead.
You originally worked with the Aurora Police Department,
Yes.
but after a particular incident, you left the department and went into private investigation.
Yes.
And you have only ever testified as a defense expert, never with the prosecution.
Yes.
You claim to be an expert in cell tower analysis,
Yes.
yet you can't provide any specific training in this area of expertise.
I was trained in a variety of police practices.
Your Honor, at this time, the prosecution objects to this witness's qualification of expertise in cell tower analysis due to a lack of specialized knowledge or training. We have no objection to the other qualifications of this witness.
The witness is qualified by experience and training to apply as an expert in all 4 areas. She'll be accepted as an expert and allowed to do so.
Okay, moving on. Have you reviewed the police reports as well as Kyle Kuzak and David Markowitz's investigation?
Yes.
And do you have anything to say on it?
It was rushed and important information was left out of the case.
And do you professionally know either of these detectives? Do you professionally know either of these detectives?
From very
Ms. Kyle, we're not able to hear your response.
Yes. I professionally know Kyle Quest from very I professionally know Kyle Quest from various conferences we had both attended.
Okay, moving on to the crime scene. Where did you begin the investigation with the crime scene? Your Honor, I believe the witness is frozen.
Places overlooked by the other detectives.
I couldn't hear you. I'll restate the question.
Yes.
Where did you begin your crime scene investigation?
I started in the places overlooked by the other detectives.
Hi. Did someone say?
No.
And starting with the investigation, where did you begin?
He froze again.
By the
Stop
other
time.
detectives.
And when reviewing these images, did you notice anything?
I noticed that there was
I'll restate the question. When reviewing these images, did you notice anything?
very little.
I'll move on. Could you elaborate?
I want to make sure the time restarted. Please continue,
Yes.
Mr. Brooks.
When reviewing these images, did you notice anything?
The only apparent evidence of a struggle was the scuff marks on the floor by the back door, and we have no way of dating scuff marks.
And were there any other inconsistencies between the crime scene photos and the detective work?
Yes, the murder weapon was chosen and the knives in the block proved to be different. The murder weapon was consistently inconsistent with the style and blade dimensions of the otherwise orderly and same set of knives that were there.
Okay, now moving on to the cell tower report. Where did you begin?
Report from Detective Markowitz.
And based on your expertise, what do these cell towers show us?
It only shows that Avery Becker's phone was near the time of the murder.
And does this mean anything?
Yes, Avery Becker lost her phone on the day of the murder and they were looking for it. They confirmed that they did not have it and were looking for it on the day of the murder.
And did you notice anything else about cell tower data?
Cell tower data is not remotely like GPS information. Since we do not have the actual phone, we can't look at its GPS data. We don't actually know that the phone was even near the victim's house.
And did you observe anything about the cell towers near Brackman's residence?
The cell tower near the victim's residence covers a wide area. The person with Avery's phone could have been in the area covered by that one tower and still been far away enough to not even see Brackman's residence from their location.
Okay, and now moving on to the fry shack. Now moving on. Do you believe there were any other motives to kill Mr. Brackman?
Yeah.
Could you elaborate? Could you elaborate? I could not hear that response. Could you elaborate?
Ms. Kyle, you're not audible again.
I'll try again. Do you believe there were any other motives to kill Mr. Brackman?
Yes.
Could you elaborate?
Blair Rawlings, who also attended CHS before the time of the murder, had much stronger motives to kill Mr. Brackman.
And why is this?
A few months before the murder, Brackman represented Jocelyn Rowlands, Blair's father, who had been charged with murder. Jocelyn Rowlands was sentenced to life in prison. This is much stronger motive than being kicked off of a high school mock trial team.
And where was Blair Rawlings on the day of the murder?
Reviewing the school reports, I discovered that Rawlings was actually absent on the day of the murder.
And did you notice anything else about Blair Rawlings?
After graduation, he mysteriously disappeared.
And what is the significance of Blair Rawlings in this case?
I believe Blair proves that the police didn't go nearly in depth enough in their investigation.
Your audio cut out again. What's the significance of Blair Rawlings in this case? I still can't hear you. I'll try one more time. What is the significance of Blair Rawlings in this case?
No, we're not able to hear you.
What is the significance of Blair Rawlings in this case? I can't hear it.
Your answers are not audible. We can't hear you.
No, I still can't.
Ms. Kyle, is there another location in the place where you are that'll give you a better Wi-Fi signal? I keep getting messages that your bandwidth is low.
Yes, I can try one.
Why don't you try and do that? Stop time.
Can you hear me now?
Better. All right. Start time.
Okay, what is the significance of Blair Rawlings in this case?
I believe that Blair proves that the police didn't go nearly in depth enough in their investigation and that their investigation has left significant doubt as to who committed this crime.
Okay, no further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Cross-examination, Mr. Chen.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Van Owen, Professor Van Owen.
Good afternoon.
And stated before, you've worked for the Aurora Police Department in the past,
Yes.
but after an incident, you left that department?
Yes.
Could you elaborate on such incident?
After an incident in which I had injured a young woman of color during arrest, I left.
Objection relevance.
Why is it relevant, Mr. Chen?
Your Honor, this is relevant because it goes to the credibility of this witness's testimony.
No, it does not, and it's extremely prejudicial. So the objection will be sustained. The evidence will be excluded on 403 grounds, and the witness's last statement will be straight. Please continue.
Let's move on to your work in private investigation. Your total fees per case are typically between $6,000 to $10,000.
Objection relevance.
Overruled.
Would you like me to ask the question again?
Yes, please.
Your total fees per case are typically between $6,000 to $10,000, depending on the case.
Yes, that's correct.
And you believe prosecutors can't see beyond their own noses?
Some of them can be like that.
And in this case, you've reviewed the police reports.
Yes.
The crime scene reconstruction conducted by Kyle Kuzak,
Yes.
the cell tower reports prepared by Detective Markowitz,
Yes.
and you've only conducted a partial investigation in this case?
I started where the other detectives have missed.
And you never actually visited the crime scene?
No.
But you believe that the police's investigation was rushed?
Yes.
And you don't believe that Kyle Kuzak's report is 100% accurate?
Yes.
And you believe that, and you have a variety of different problems with Detective Markowitz's cell tower reports?
Yes.
And you believe that the police had the necessary tools at their fingertips and simply just chose not to use them?
Yes.
But to come to the conclusions you've testified in court today, you used both Kuzak and Markowitz's documents?
Yes.
Let's talk about the evidence at the scene. You believe that Detective Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak influence each other's findings,
Yes.
but you have no proof to back up this claim.
Not directly.
And you've stated before that the only evidence of a struggle was the scuff marks on the floor?
Yes, but we have no way of dating those, so those could have been made years prior.
But there was also, are you aware that there was also a broken plate on the floor of the kitchen?
Yes.
Let's talk about the Ring videos. It is your belief that this crime was a premeditated murder?
Yes.
But in the Ring video shown, the perpetrator was not holding a knife?
Yes. The perpetrator also had a hoodie on.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Redirect examination, Mr. Brooks?
No, not this time, Your Honor.
All right. So the witness can step down. Any further evidence on behalf of the defense?
No, the defense rests, Your Honor.
All right. Then we'll hear closing arguments for the prosecution.
Your Honor, could I please reserve 1 minute of my time for rebuttal?
Sure, I'll let you reserve whatever time is left from your 5 minutes. So go ahead, Ms. Burns.
Forced off the team, forced in the house. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you for your service as jurors today. As the prosecution stated in opening statements earlier today, Avery Becker is guilty of the burglary and felony murder of Mackenzie Brackman. We have seen videos of her at the house at the time of the murder, and we have seen the photos, text messages, and cell phone evidence that proves she is guilty. It really is that simple. Avery was mad with Mr. Brackman all the time, and they had a very terrible relationship. We know that Avery was enraged after Mr. Brackman told her to work harder, and we know that Mr. Brackman demoted her to the B team, which infuriated Avery enough to vandalize Mr. Brackman's car. We know that she was cut from the team completely, which pushed Avery over the edge with anger. We also know that Avery even made her revenge plans clear through texts sent to Alex Cifuentes. Forced off the team, forced in the house. Avery has been charged on 2 counts, burglary and felony murder. The burglary charge is simple. Avery Becker knowingly, unlawfully entered Coach Brackman's home with the intent to commit a crime. We know from the text messages that that crime was more vandalism, which under the law is called criminal mischief. The second law is felony murder. Miss Becker committed this burglary and it resulted in Coach Brackman's death. Whether Avery intentionally killed Mr. Brackman or if killing the coach was an accident that happened during the burglary, it doesn't matter. Under the law, felony murder just means that the coach died in the course of the burglary. Ms. Becker's only defense in this case is her unbelievable claim that the person we saw in the videos approaching the coach's home to break in was not Ms. Becker, but someone else. This unreasonable assertion is simply not true because of the location of Avery's phone was at Mr. Brackman's house at the time of his murder, and no one can testify with reasonable alibis that she was elsewhere. The defense says that the text messages are faked, but this is not reasonable because Alex Fuentes has no incentive to harm Avery Becker, and what good would it do for her if her best friend was taken away? And the defense says that Avery lost her phone, but this is not reasonable because she stated herself that her phone was like her third kidney, but only realized it was gone the next day. Taylor Perkins, who testified for the defense, has made her loyalties quite clear, even before the death of Mr. Brackman. Alex Fuentes testified and explained how Taylor Perkins was quite easily convinced to drop off of the A-team even before Mr. Brackman was murdered. Alex Fuentes testified and explained how clearly Taylor would do anything for Avery and quite possibly is lying to protect her best friend. Ladies and gentlemen, there has been no evidence presented in this case that raises a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker is guilty of both burglary and felony murder. Any doubts that the defense is trying to create in this case are unreasonable. It is unreasonable for the defendant to expect you to believe the text messages from Avery to Alex are fake. It is unreasonable for the defendant to expect you to believe that Avery lost her phone. And it is unreasonable for the defendant to expect you to believe that Blair Rollins killed Mr. Brackman. Thank you again for your dedication and careful consideration in this case. We ask that after carefully considering all of the evidence, you reach the only reasonable verdict in this case. Avery Becker is guilty of both burglary and felony murder. For these reasons, I ask that you return verdicts of guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burns. Closing argument on behalf of the defendant, Mr. Brooks.
Yes. Suspect, not scapegoat. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today has shown that Avery Becker has been a platform for the prosecution and nothing more. We have proven today that there is not enough evidence to convict Avery Becker with murder in the first degree and second degree burglary of Mr. Brackman's residence. The prosecution has built their entire case off of assumptions and faulty evidence. First, you heard from Avery Becker, whose unstable relationship with Mr. Brackman and past mistakes has been put against her to cause an untrue narrative trying to paint Avery as an unstable and terrible person. All she wanted to do was make things right between her and Mr. Brackman. Next, you heard from Avery's best friend, Taylor Perkins, who told authorities that Avery was with her the entire day at the mall on the day of the murder, looking for her lost phone, which detectives later said were near the house of Mr. Brackman. Taylor also pointed out another possible suspect, Blair Rollins, who had mysteriously disappeared on the day of the murder and has not been seen since. Finally, Professor Blake Van Owens shed light on the many mistakes that were made while reviewing the police report and crime scene. He proved that Avery Becker could have not possibly committed the crime with her stature. For the prosecution, David Markowitz completed a investigation, however missed improper procedures to obtain the screenshots of Alex's text messages, despite Alex even offering to go back to the station with her phone. Next, Kyle Kuzak's entire investigation was built off of minimal evidence and using the easy conclusions instead of digging deeper within the case. Alex Fuentes wanted Avery off the team. Her biased opinions held power within the prosecution's investigation, causing simple facts to be overlooked. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today the prosecution holds the burden of proof, which they have failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker is guilty. They have used Avery as a scapegoat to make their investigation easier, not looking further into the facts and using untrustworthy evidence provided by a jealous high schooler who wanted a bigger role on the mock trial team and would benefit from Avery out of the picture. People of the jury, you must rule that Avery Becker is not guilty on charges of murder in the first degree and second degree burglary of Mr. Brackman's house. Thank you.
Rebuttal closing argument for the prosecution. Ms. Burns?
Yes, Your Honor. May I ask how much time I have left?
Go ahead.
You have 1 minute and 5 seconds remaining.
Thank you. Suspect, or not a suspect, but a scapegoat. The defense is trying to taint your perception of Blair Rollins and pin the burglary and felony murder on her. Blair, ladies and gentlemen, is the scapegoat. It is unreasonable for the defendant to expect you to believe Avery Becker lost her phone. It is unreasonable for the defendant to expect you to believe Blair Rollins is the suspect. And lastly, it is unreasonable for the defendant to expect you to believe anyone other than Avery Becker committed these crimes. Not a suspect, but a scapegoat. The defense's theme could not be even more accurate to describe Blair Rollins, who the defense is trying to pin the crimes of this case on. Avery Becker, ladies and gentlemen, is a suspect, and most certainly not the scapegoat. For these reasons, I ask that you return verdicts of guilty. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Burns. All right, team members, everybody take a deep breath. That was a really nice job. You guys have demonstrated what I've seen over the last 4 rounds, and that is you guys have put a ton of work into this. I thought that your familiarity with the case problem was really impressive. Everybody knew their role. Everybody had practiced and rehearsed. Your use of the technology to make this trial happen was really impressive. And I have a feeling that you're all going to sleep well tonight because that's been a pretty dense 2 days. So I need to give the scoring judges just a minute or two to tally their scores and submit them. And then they'll each give you about 2 or 3 minutes of feedback on what they saw. I know you're tired. It's been 4 rounds. We're late, but I think you probably want to hear from them for at least a couple minutes. Judge Hughes, are your scores submitted?
Yes, Your Honor, my scores are submitted.
All right, you want to take 2 or 3 minutes and just tell these folks what you saw?
Sure. Just to introduce myself, my name is David Hughes. I'm a deputy county attorney in the Boulder County Attorney's Office. And I want to echo what Judge Mulvihill said. I really felt that both teams showed that they spent a lot of time preparing their sides of the case. And what impressed me the most is, for both sides, is that they really dove into the facts. This is I have judged other rounds of this competition, and I heard facts that I had not heard from other teams. So I appreciate the way that you really went into detail. The other side of the coin is that sometimes you can leave facts out that may not advance your case. And I think there were a couple times when maybe you went too deep. And I think that was true for both sides. But overall, I was really impressed with the preparation and also how, despite difficulties with technology, you seemed unruffled and kept persevering. So I was impressed. Good job, guys.
Judge Mallard, my friend and former colleague, have you submitted your scores?
Who?
You, my friend and former colleague.
Oh, okay. Yes, I have submitted my scores.
Want to tell these folks, give them a little feedback, please?
Yeah, the thing that jumped out at me, as Mr. Hughes was just saying, how you took in stride the technical difficulties. There was one part where the one questioner asked a question probably 3 or 4 times and got no response whatsoever, and just calmly asked it again. Then we took a break or whatever it was we did to get the audio back on. I just thought you managed the problems and the unforeseen problems really well, because I'm sure you've practiced yourselves to death getting ready for this. And so the fact that you could take unforeseen problems and manage them was real commendable. So I take my hat off to you for that.
Thank you. Ms. Landis, Judge Landis.
Hi, I'm Brett Landis. I'm the managing attorney of the Boulder County Legal Services Office. And yeah, again, I want to echo what Judge Mallard just said. Really, the calm-headedness and graciousness which all of you handled some really pretty significant technological challenges. You definitely put practicing attorneys, including myself, to shame in your ability to kind of go with the flow of technology that's not cooperating with you. So really, really well done on that. I will say one thing that I did see happen once or twice on both teams is letting a sustained objection derail some important points that you needed to make in your case. So really, you again want to be really prepared on knowing what those objections are likely to be that would come up, and knowing why your evidence is still admissible. And if it does get sustained, figuring out how to still get to your point. So don't let it derail you. I want to make a mention of the witnesses, because I feel like you guys get a little neglected in these competitions that are judged by mostly lawyers. Really, really great job overall. I think one thing to remember is the witness during their testimony is the star, particularly during. So attorneys, when you're questioning your witness, take your time with that. Let them show through. But overall, really, really great round. Really, really great professionalism on both sides, and I thank you all for that.
You guys did a terrific job. I hope that you're all going on to the next round. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and stay warm. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye now.